This is Stephanie Tribo, Assistant Superintendent for RSU 13, and today's podcast is about how we can best prepare students for their future aspirations beyond high school and what we can do while they are in school in order to best support them. First, we're going to hear from some of our younger learners and hear a little bit about some of their goals and aspirations and how they think they're going to reach those goals and what they might receive from school. We will hear from somebody in the business world and hear a little bit about what their expectations are. And then you're going to have an opportunity to hear from some of our educators who recently went out into the field and visited some businesses and organizations. And you're going to hear some of their key takeaways. Our young learners are elementary school students, and you're going to hear about how they have arrived at some of their aspirations and some of the assumptions around how they think they might be supported in their future goals and aspirations. What do you hope to be when you grow up?
Probably a teacher or a nail artist.
And how did you become interested in those two careers?
Because a teacher seems really fun since I'm gonna work with kids, and a nail artist seems really fun because that's one of my hobbies.
What do you think will help you learn more about being a teacher?
I'll have more experience if I go to school more. I'll see how the teachers do it, and then when I go to college, I can learn more of how to be a teacher.
Oh, interesting. Okay, and what are your expectations of how schools are going to help you figure out what you're good at and what you want to do? Do you think that's the job of schools?
Yeah.
And how do you think schools will do that?
By showing us jobs and how interesting they might be, if they showed us a nail job, if they showed me a nail job or a teaching job, and then demonstrated how to do it, then maybe that could help me be interested in it if I didn't know what job I was going to have.
And you think schools should help to do that?
Yeah.
To prepare you?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. It's interesting to hear from our first learner who immediately goes to the idea of being a teacher because that's what she is exposed to on a daily basis and can see herself in that role, and it is something that interests her. But to also recognize that there's often a pattern of children thinking about what their parents do if they hear their parents talking about their work, but also seeing daily what their teachers do. So oftentimes with young children, there's a trend of an interest of going into teaching and into education. You'll also notice with our first learner that she talks about this assumption and expectation that the school is going to be preparing her for one of those roles. And she talks about being a nail artist and thinking that the school is going to maybe provide some sort of a avenue or pathway for some sort of exposure so that she can have a better idea of what she might be interested in as she continues on her way through school. And this assumption is pretty close to what my assumption was as I was going through school as well. And I think that's part of what's interested me in this problem of practice, because I remember specifically being in 7th grade and thinking that I would have somebody tell me what I was good at so that I had an idea of what I should be following, what sort of pathway might be out there for me. And ultimately, that never ended up happening. And I think that that tends to be a really big gap with our students. And I think that that creates a gap in our community as well, with that connection between schools and then the broader community and our businesses and organizations. And so the biggest question for my problem of practice that I'm trying to tackle in my community is thinking about how do we bridge the gap between schools and the businesses and organizations that are in our community. And we're really fortunate in the Midcoast area to have a wealth of opportunities. We're not so rural that there aren't a lot of job opportunities. In fact, right now, our businesses and organizations are hungry for employees. So the timing is definitely prime to really think about these relationships and how we break down the walls of school and don't just assume that all of the learning needs to take place within the walls of our school building, because there's so much rich learning that happens outside of school, especially when students have their first job and they realize some of those soft skills, which you'll hear about a little bit later, especially as we debrief our opportunity when our administrators were in the field. I want you to hear from one other learner, because going along the lines of the same theme of students thinking about what's in their world and gaining aspirations from what they see and what they're exposed to, our next learner talks about wanting to be a veterinarian. And she wants to be a veterinarian because she thinks about her pets at home and her passion for them. So again, really gaining those future aspirations from exposure. And it makes me think about how important those learning opportunities and exposure to what's available in our community, or perhaps more broadly, what's available in Maine. And certainly there are many, many broader opportunities beyond Maine, but we have to make the effort to really expose students to what's out there. Wow. What do you hope to be when you grow up?
I hope to be a veterinarian.
Okay. How did you become interested in that?
I've had 2 pets, and they're pretty cuddly, and I want to help animals like them to live that far and even farther.
So because you've had a little bit of experience in your own house, that's why you think you want to be a vet?
Yes.
Okay. What else do you think will help you learn more about that job of being a vet?
School.
So again, there's these formative experiences that children are pulling from to provide them with these aspirations. And then you hear again from both of these learners this assumption that school is going to be playing a role in their aspirations and their future pathway. And I think along the way in schools, we start to lose some of those really important formative opportunities for students to be able to connect outside of school to continue to help shape what they might want to do in their future. Next, we hear from a perspective from the banking world. This person has been in banking for the past 15 years, and I was curious about what some of the expectations are from the business perspective of future employees and how schools might best prepare the workforce that might enter the business world. So this is Jim. He is a commercial credit manager from one of our local banks, and he is going to address a couple of questions about qualities that businesses are looking for. So Jim, what are some of the qualities that businesses are looking for when hiring?
When we're hiring, certainly we have some specific technical skills that we look for as a bank. We have to do certain things, but really in the interview process, I think what we're looking for is people who have a genuine interest in the banking industry, who show a inquisitive nature. In commercial credit, a lot of it's about not just the mathematics you have to do, but it's about really digging in to find out what the true story of what this customer is trying to do for their business. How are they trying to grow? How are they trying to finance it? And it's question asking, it's probing. It's not just taking the surface answer to the question and running with it. It's asking a secondary question to it. And so I think for when we're in the interview process, we're looking for people who are coming in prepared to ask questions about the role, about the company, about the job, and how it may prepare them for other opportunities. Certainly in today's environment where we're doing a lot of our interviewing via Zoom and those types of mediums, we're looking for people who are still treating it like it's a formal process. Even if we're not meeting in person, as a bank, we're a pretty formal industry. Seeing people show up in a shirt and tie, even if they're on the other end of a camera, it still means a lot. It shows a level of thoughtfulness into the process. When people are preparing their resumes, are they making it tailor specific to the role, or is it very obvious that it's a generic application for a lot of different things to look into? So we're really looking for make sure people are paying attention to what they're doing, and they're showing a genuine interest in not just getting a job, but getting a job with the bank I work at and in the field that I'm in.
What are you seeing as some of the lacking skills of new hires who maybe are more recent college or high school graduates?
I think one of the big benefits that they bring to us is they are comfortable with using technology, and we're ever more becoming a more technology-driven industry like most are. But I think the biggest area of, I guess I'll use the term weaknesses, while they're comfortable using the technology, they're not always comfortable trying to figure out what to do with it. And, within what we do in commercial credit, there's certainly a lot of mathematics behind it, but it's digging deeper beyond just what the numbers are. It's not just punching the information into the computer and getting an output. It's asking the questions of why. And what we see a lot of today is, new workers that are very good if you tell them exactly what steps to follow within the technology. And we're really looking for people who are willing to learn what the technology does and then take it upon themselves to figure how they can maximize it in their role. All the technology we have is great. You can't break any of it. So you might as well get in there and dig around a little bit and try to figure out how to use it. And a lot of times find out better ways to use it than we may even know today, because as someone who's of a different generation, I'm not as fluent in some of the technology that's available today.
And do you have any thoughts on how schools might help better prepare students for the workforce and maybe for you specifically, the banking industry?
Yeah, I think for the workforce in general, I do think that our students are coming out, a little bit with a lack of professionalism. I think still, though the corporate world is becoming more lax today, there is still a level of professionalism. The adage of dress for the job you want, not the job you have, still carries merit. So, understanding how to interview professionally, how to address someone in a professional setting. Resume writing is still something that's very important today, and I see as something that we're really reliant now upon, the Microsoft Word template to drive resume versus actually understanding what types of information is beneficial to put in there. I think once they get into the workforce, one thing I think that is very evident to me in some cases are, there's a reliance upon being told what to do and being told what the answer to your question is, and not a lot of inquisitiveness at times to go find what the answer might be, or to research a topic to become more comfortable with asking a better question. And I think some of it's just either a fear of failure, whether it be acting like acknowledging they don't know the answer. I deal with young workers all the time that have, master's degree in business, and those are great, but none of what they did there has prepared them to do everything that we're doing. And the only way they're going to learn is by working with a mentor, someone more senior to them who's seen that example and can talk to them about what that means in that scenario. And then asking those questions, being receptive to constructive criticism. And I think it's that fear of failure, knowing that that's okay. That's part of the learning process. I think one way that maybe could help facilitate that is, getting kids at the high school age or maybe even earlier some exposure to the business world. I know coming out of college with my business degree, I was educated, but I wasn't trained to do anything. I had no training going into the business environment. So getting exposure to that, through internships at the college level is great, but you've invested a lot of time and energy and frankly money at that point to really realize maybe by your junior, senior year of college that that's not a world you want to be in. I think if we can get kids into some exposure to what types of businesses and within businesses, what types of roles are out there, I think people will see that there's a lot of opportunities, and then could be much more, have a much more, I don't want to say necessarily educated, but really have an end goal in mind when they're picking that next step, whether it be a college program or how they go through college. Maybe, if you have an end goal in mind of this is an area you might be in, to work at the bank I work at, you don't need to attend an Ivy League school. I attended a local Maine college. Most of my coworkers attended a local Maine college, and those degrees are great and more cost effective. There's ways of going through the community college system to get some of those credits. It's more cost effective, and I think it could really be beneficial to, have an idea of what an end goal of a career could look like before you even have to start making those decisions of how am I going to get myself prepared to go into that. And combining forces with the business community and our school districts, I think is a great way to get people exposure.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to provide a little bit more information from the business world.
Thank you.
I think what's interesting about what Jim suggests here from the business world perspective is really a theme that I've heard echo across the state. And I've had the opportunity to travel around Maine to different counties and hear from businesses and organizations through an educational leadership experience through Educate Maine. And one of the themes is really highlighting those soft skills, the importance of those soft skills. And I think that this can be identified as an area that perhaps schools haven't been preparing students as well as we could. And then I think the other gap here is really, again, going back to those young learners, helping to make those connections early and provide lots of formative opportunities for exposure to things that might become future aspirations for our children, and really supporting those possibilities along the way. And thinking about some of the things that are highlighted in this interview, I'm really thinking a lot about self-directed learners, confidence, professionalism, and some of those key skills that schools really could have an opportunity to help highlight if we had perhaps some internships and some partnerships that we might be able to highlight the learning side and feedback side for students in some of these partnerships. If we can provide some learning experiences and opportunities to allow students to get outside of the building and really gain some of those soft skills in the real world. Our final segment of this podcast includes some conversation after a group of administrators had the opportunity to go around and visit some local businesses and organizations right here on the Mid-Coast. And this learning opportunity for our administrators was inspired by the ELE, which is the Educational Leadership Experience, sponsored by Educate Maine and UNUM. And this experience brings educators from across the state together and brings them to different communities across Maine and different counties, and allows them to see the different and very diverse businesses, organizations, and future employment for our students that we are growing within our schools. And it's a very eye-opening experience. There's many businesses across Maine that I don't think any of the educators in this group had any idea. And I wanted to be able to replicate this experience within our own community for our administrators. So I contacted our local Chamber of Commerce and we put a plan together to explore some of the opportunities right here in RSU 13. We boarded a bus and we traveled to one of our local banks and heard a bit about the banking industry and how there's a variety of positions, including some great entry-level opportunities. We then traveled to Main Street Markets and Ada's Kitchen, both located on Main Street. And we had an opportunity to hear a little bit about what it's like to grow a business in downtown Rockland. And we were hosted and had a fabulous lunch, great conversation. And during our lunch conversation, we had a visit from a local lobsterman, Cole Baines, who talked about his experience going to college and then entering into the lobstering industry. And he also does some kelp farming, so he was able to speak to the group about that. From there, we went to IFF, where they produce carrageenan for different flavorings and foods and fragrances. So lots of really great learning opportunities. And next, you're going to hear the administrators that were part of this experience reflecting on their learning for the day. Biggest takeaway from the day after going and visiting different businesses and organizations within the community? What are some of the things that you're either thinking about or that you noticed or that surprised you? What's your takeaway?
My biggest takeaway is that we just need to be having more conversations with our students earlier about the different options that they have, both in this community and outside of Maine, so that they can prepare better.
Mine's very similar. I think that as a person who doesn't live in Rockland or isn't from the Mid-Coast area, I didn't know how much is available. And I certainly, as a high school educator, did not know so much was available that you don't need a high school, like beyond high school. So that was shocking to me. It was also very exciting to me because I'm used to farming and things like that, which are going by the wayside. So some really great options.
My biggest takeaway was similar as well. I was really impressed with how many options there are, like really good options there are for kids coming out of high school. But it's also kind of concerning with how well they're being prepared for it, just by hearing what they were looking for like, in an employee with like, good communication and work ethic and stuff. Like kids don't typically learn until until some learn early, but some are in their 30s or 40s and some don't ever learn.
I think my biggest takeaway of some patterns that I heard were that employers are really looking for soft skills rather than hard skills. And so I think that's something to keep in mind for how we're incorporating those soft skills into the classroom. And kind of being open about doing that so kids know that they have those and know what those look like in different settings.
I agree with what everybody else had to say. I think one of my biggest takeaways is what I talked to Steph about as we were leaving is as we're looking to develop kind of the entry point into pathways and job shadows and internships, providing opportunities similar to what we've done today to go out and see some businesses and talk to some business owners and different organizations that can match up with student interests. That way, we can start trying to partner students with future employers, but B, also alternative pathways that they wouldn't have considered on their own.
Yeah, I agree with everybody else. Also, I think the soft skills thing is really important. The things I heard just thematically, people show up. that they're looking for people who are self-starters and like take initiative, and people who can like get along with others and are like kind of have a curiosity. So I kept noticing that people sort of want people who have, they're looking for employees who are after something, want to do something. So I think intellectual, or whatever we're gonna call it, some sort of form of learning curiosity is what people are after, rather than someone who comes with a set skill set.
My takeaway was also along the line of soft skills, but I feel like the things that we heard from employers today are not maybe necessarily things that I feel like are prioritized in our practice every day, and certainly not maybe the things that we use to measure our success or our impact. As we talked this morning about reading and math and language skills, all very important things, but how are we facilitating and kind of assessing whether we're achieving success in those, the self-starter skills, the creativity, the ability to be self-directed, and kind of take initiative in those types of areas.
I think my biggest takeaway with all the businesses that we visited was that they're looking to give more than just a job. They're looking to help people find a career and also find, what they're passionate about. And again, it's more than just, coming in and punching a clock. So I was really impressed with that.
Yeah, I guess I had two, if I could say two. The first is very similar to what you all said, which is I'm very surprised to realize the variety of opportunities there are here, and that's very exciting. And second for me is when I talk to really young students about what they want to do, trying to help them connect what they're learning now to what they want to do in their lives, I feel like I have some better examples now when I think about that Carrie Geenan lab, or I think about the need for the variety of people who work at the bank. So it's just going to give me some better examples, I think.
I noticed a similar comment in LEs where they talked about students being good communicators, positive attitude, having that real passion. And I really enjoyed that a lot of the places offered that on-the-job training. So it was good to see opportunities for those students who choose not to go on to college, that they can get the training within the job. They're really competitive, their benefits and the pay and everything sounded really appealing. And it would be nice to get back maybe to, I know some of us were talking about it in the past, I as a student, I did tour FMC. I toured Dragon Cement when I was a kid, and we don't do that so much anymore. Maybe we need to get back to a little bit of that so kids when they're younger can see that these opportunities exist, because I think they have no clue that this is even right here in our backyard. So start some of that exploring earlier.
I think similar, what I heard from the employers was they're looking for passion, they're looking for enthusiasm from the student, not necessarily passion for that industry, but just passion in general, enthusiasm in general, and they'll do the rest. Also, the opportunities are incredible, and I'm a firm believer that while a student might choose a certain pathway while they're in the classroom, getting them involved in an internship or getting them to try that in real life might actually direct their pathway in a more substantive way.
One of the things that I picked up on was the fact that these business people were excited to see us, and I think they were really happy to see you all. And I think that's indicative of the fact that I think they want to work with us. And I heard several times, send us your kids, send us your kids. So I think that's great. I think the more that we kick that door open and make efforts to get out there in the community, I think it's the start of a really good thing. So I could hear it in their voices. They're happy to see us.
And I think what's great about the places that we visited is in a brainstorm with Tom, they're sort of the first places that we just sort of brainstormed and that popped up, and they all wanted us. They all were like, yes, this is a great idea. We want to work with schools. Nobody was like, no, we don't have time for that. So I think that's really exciting. They all were very welcoming, and I think this is the start of some great potential future partnerships. We have a very rich community, like I mentioned at the beginning of the day, and when I've had the opportunity to go out and see other businesses and organizations across the state, I picked up on the same themes that you guys are seeing in our own community today. So I think that's exciting, what's out there for kids that really could be entry level as well, and really trying to be the ones that are helping to connect them to those opportunities, because businesses can't do it on their own and we can't do it on our own. We need to try to find this partnership. And I really do think that it starts with us as a school system. That great conversation and reflection is hopefully just the start of many more opportunities for connections with the community to come. And again, this is Stephanie Tribo with RSU 13 providing this podcast for you today. And I would like to close with just a little bit of inspirational song. Thanks for listening.
Where did you learn what you wanted to be? Sit behind a desk in school in row 3, listening to your mom and daddy, maybe watching CSI on TV. I bet that for most it wasn't in school. It was trial and error, the deep end of the pool, or you had a special mentor, someone who inspired you. Maybe it was someone who took a chance and hired you. What I'm trying to say is that we really don't prepare our students for the future and help them to be aware of the many opportunities outside the classroom doors, jobs that are out there beyond mine and yours. Don't throw away all the lessons just yet. We need to be creative. Consider the fate of, the state of, the weight of being innovative. The trains are dying. Listen to what that's implying. By creating all the same, we've been blurring the name for what our kids can be, and when they made the sky the limit, it made it harder to see. A place for each individual with skills to find their separate paths and their own free wills. I'm not saying we need to lower the bar. We don't even really need to look far. Our kids don't need to leave the state. When we look around, the opportunities are great. It's time to heed the call, to break down the wall. Don't build up our assets in their classes just to have them later fall. Maine depends on our kids for the economy. How do we merge these worlds more seamlessly? Eventually, we need to see that partnerships are the way to be, the way to inspire, light a fire for our youth. They need to see the truth, see what's out there, see the proof, experience real opportunities within their neighborhood or communities. So let's take a stand instead of throwing up our hands. Invest in some pathways, partnerships, and clear plans. Our kids will benefit when their future commences. Let's act in our role of in loco parentis to ensure that students know what's out there for each and put some aspirations in their immediate reach.